bitches, every city in my tribe. Look behind. Booty dominate the world, peaches ripe.
Hello?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. I was listening in, and I really was interested listening to that kid kind of be a jackass to you a little bit. But when his friend came in and he said, "Do you believe in God?" And what's frustrating to me is that because I came from a place where I wholeheartedly believed in God and believed that abortion was all these horrible things. And as a man, that was very easy for me and convenient for me to be able to feel that way because it never really affected me. But what I try and when I hear these issues, um, I try and have this discussion with people of faith because I think if you are a person of faith, you believe in a soul. You believe a spirit or a soul or something that carries with us from before and after and so on. And the issue to me, to someone on this issue of abortion that I always try and ask, and it's an impossible question or impossible question to answer, but I try and do it from that point of view of talking to people of faith when this, but it is, when does the soul enter the body? And if the soul enters the body before a child is born out of the womb, then what's the purpose of even coming to this life? If you can, if your life ends with abortion, you make it straight to heaven. You're an innocent child who goes to heaven. So does God account for this? And I only do that just kind of try and challenge that issue of when life begins, what it means to have life. Does having the soul enter the body for someone of faith? Is that what makes it a human being? Is that what it means to a God, if you believe that? So I try and ask those questions because these are impossible questions to answer. And so back off with the religious stuff, because you can't come down on these issues as this is so right and I know it, right? Even
Yeah.
faith itself is a question mark. It is a hope. It is not a fact. And so asserting your religious positions onto someone else, you are putting something that you cannot explain for a fact. It's only your faith, and trying to say to them that that person or that child or the fetus has the identity that you give it because you have faith in something. I don't know if that's making sense or not, but it's very frustrating when I hear that. And then also, let me just say this because I don't want to take too much of your time. When everybody's telling a woman what to do with her body, and you made a great point that they always go to different questions. Well, what about the consent when you had sex? I have sex, and I don't intend to get a woman pregnant every time I have sex.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. And so if you're saying that, well, don't have sex if you don't want to have an abortion, is such a lame argument for Christians to make, because Christians enjoy sex too. And so the other, well, I don't know if they enjoy it. I don't know everybody but it's an enjoyable thing. I'm sure people of faith enjoy their sex. So you're not doing
No, I
it
make
just to
that
have a baby.
argument all the time, that I
Yeah.
actually argue that more people have sex for pleasure and emotional intimacy than they do for procreation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you believe in God, thank you, God, for creating that you can have that bond with someone that draws you closer to them and gives you that special experience with them that draws you closer without having to have a fetus come along and potentially change your life without necessarily you wanting that. So, yeah, I also want to say one last thing before I get off, if you don't mind.
No, please do. I'm enjoying, I usually don't get this perspective very often, so I really appreciate you giving me a new lens.
Well, one of the things that bothers me about the men talking about this is we put all this burden on the female for having to be responsible with birth control. Then I've heard the argument, well, no one should have an abortion without the potential father having a say in this. Why couldn't you also say, why shouldn't that potential father be responsible for birth control, since that father can impregnate a woman 365 days a year, but the woman can only be impregnated probably about, it could be 24 to 36 days a year. So who should have the greater burden for birth control, the male or the female?
Yeah.
It is 100% the male who should be responsible for that birth control, for being responsible for his own birth control. Even though it's not perfect, I get that. It is the man who has the greater burden to take responsibility for birth control, not the woman.
I agree. Like, wow, like very insightful. And I love it. And I can't tell you, I've told people who watch me, like, please don't play a drinking game where you take a drink every time I say self-righteous, because I feel like I say that a lot. And you are correct when people like come on here and say those things. I just feel it's very self-righteous in a lot of instances. Did you always have these ideas, or is this kind of your
no.
experience? And
no, I was a devout Mormon for most of my life. Came to a realization that, well, I just grew. I questioned, I grew, I sought out, and there was a time I would have told you that abortion is a sin, that it is murder, and that it's. I would have said some of these things that they were saying. The problem is where I started. I don't know if you care to hear this or not, but where I started to change my faith was when I started to look at it and say, how sure am I that I'm right, and that if and even within the Christian religion, you have different religions saying, well, we are right, you're wrong, we have it, you don't. And then when I expanded that to other religions and started to realize that, look, other religions think that they're right. So why am I so right? Why am I the one who's insisting I'm always the only one who's right? Because what ultimately happens with most faith journeys is you get to a point where you believe it so strongly that this is the only truth that exists, and I'm choosing this truth, and therefore this is fact, and therefore I'm going to impose that fact on other people. Or even if I don't impose it, it still becomes a part of my worldview, and therefore it becomes a part of my political views. And those political views turn into laws that, whether we like it or not, are based on our religious beliefs. And so we are imposing that when we believe we are right. But when you open up and realize I may be wrong, someone else may have a different experience, that's when everything started to change for me. And when we say our shelf broke, we put so many things up on our shelf, and when that shelf finally breaks, so many doubts and things that we have, when that shelf finally breaks, we are left with the devastation afterwards, and that is usually a lot of questions about everything that we believed, including
so you are an
beliefs.
ex-Mormon then?
Yes. Well, legally, I'm still a Mormon. That's why my name's Legally Mormon.
Can I ask you a question?
I'm still a member of the church on their records. Yes.
So I've watched kind of a lot of information about kind of the fall of the Mormon Church since 2012. And would you say like that you are under that umbrella, or
oh, yeah.
there's been like a huge exodus? And
it has, and they're fighting it very hard. They're changing things that they used to excommunicate people for saying the things that many ex-Mormons are saying now, that the church is now acknowledging because they have to. And you look at politically what they've done. One of the biggest things they did, and I don't know your politics. I mean, I've just kind of come across this. I'm going to give you a follow when I'm done here.
Oh yeah, I follow
with you. One of the things that really pulled people away was the LGBT issues and stance that the church was taking. And speaking of children and innocent children, right? If that's the motivation, there was a policy in November 2015 that the church put out through their prophet, proclaiming to be doctrine, that the church would not baptize children who were in same-sex marriage homes. So a gay couple who had a child, that child could not be baptized in the Mormon church until they turned 18. So if a gay couple had a son and their grandparents wanted to take that son to church, that child could not be baptized. The church would refuse to baptize that child. Now, what happened was they would still allow for the child of a white nationalist to be baptized, a convicted rapist to be baptized, a child of a convicted murderer to be baptized, but they wouldn't allow it for an innocent child whose parents just so happened to be gay. And that was November 2015. Then you had the Prop 8 out in California, where the church was trying to take away the right to marry in the state of California. And all that stuff, I think, really put people at the forefront of asking these questions about why is this church so taking such a hard position on on something like this. And their history is that they did that. They excluded black people from having full membership in the church until 1978. So it's another one of those political issues that I think happened after 2012 that has really opened the floodgates for people to leave and wonder who's calling the shots. If you can baptize, we're talking about innocent children, if you can baptize the child of a white nationalist, even, let's not go too extreme with the murder and the rape, but you couldn't baptize a child who is in the home of a gay couple. It's insane.
That's definitely a very cherry-picked ideology.
Oh, God.
When I typically do talk with people about like religion and abortion, are you familiar with the term quickening?
Quickening?
Yeah.
I don't believe I am.
So quickening is an older term that it's essentially when the mother can feel her baby move. So prior to quickening, even no religion felt that abortion was immoral. It wasn't until the late part of the 19th century when women started to gain political power, when there was a mass immigration of Catholics and other minorities. Everyone says my audio is glitching. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
And at that point, the most common person to receive an abortion was a Protestant white married woman. So essentially, they made abortion illegal, number one, because they felt that people immigrating here, if we allowed white women to continue having abortions, that the white majority would fall. And then as well, to really put women back in the home. Just because they didn't want them to be in the political atmosphere. So it really was to kind of further the white male patriarchy. And so when I talk to people about abortion and religion, it wasn't really adopted as their platform until the early 1900s. And essentially it was to keep and gain political power.
I'm so fucking cute, bitch. I'm so fucking cute.